Right now, early voting is underway in Michigan's primary elections. Officials say more than 500,000 people have already voted by mail. In Alaska, a new report shows 3,000 voters are being asked to verify citizenship ahead of the midterms. And across the country, federal prosecutors are struggling to turn voter fraud claims into criminal charges, according to a report in the Washington Post. And as Democratic lawmakers prepare for doomsday GOP election scenarios, President Trump returned to the scene from his infamous campaign where he pressed election officials to overturn the 2020 result in Georgia.
They are shredding ballots, in my opinion, based on what I've heard. So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
What we're saying is not at all what you're describing.
Okay.
And these are investigators from our office. These are investigators from GBI. And they're looking and they're good. And that's not what they're seeing.
So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
Joining me now, Miles Taylor, founder and executive director at Defiance.org and former chief of staff to previous directors of Homeland Security. I know, Miles, it is still stunning to listen to this 6 years later, especially when the president says they are shredding ballots, in my opinion. That's what I've heard. I mean, he remains undeterred by the facts. So what is to stop him from making similar phone calls this November?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Alex, this time there's going to be a lot more preparation, okay? Because this time we see it coming. I think the reason that Donald Trump's stolen election claims shocked the country in 2020 is that a lot of people did not expect him to steal the election. Look, his own White House chief of staff at the time, if you remember, penned this op-ed where he said, don't worry, the president, if he loses, will concede gracefully and leave office. That was not the case. But this time, secretaries of state, state attorneys general, they are anticipating that Donald Trump will falsely contest the results, and they're preparing for it. They've had planning meetings. I'm sure we'll talk about the congressional planning meetings. There's activity underway, and from a legal standpoint, these states have basically got their lawsuits drafted to keep federal hands off of ballots that they shouldn't be on.
Okay, yesterday he referred to recent primaries in California, which does have a very drawn-out ballot counting system. Let's listen to some of what he said there.
They find all these ballots all of a sudden. They came down from heaven, hundreds of thousands of ballots. Isn't it wonderful? He had no chance of losing, but all of a sudden time went by, and the election's long over. And I heard a report that Spencer Pratt's not doing that well. I said, watch, he's going to lose. And he lost. It's crooked.
Okay, so what message is he sending, and what impact might language like this have on voters?
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you very bluntly, the message the president is sending is he literally, a decade into politics, does not understand how an election is run. He does not understand that ballots come in from different places and they get counted over time. This is the same man who in an Oval Office meeting suggested to us to get cows to the Rio Grande, we could just get fire trucks to have them climb up ladders to go over the border wall. I don't even know what he meant by that, right? And the same man doesn't understand how an election happens. So that's worrying in and of itself. But look, the effect that this could have is, I think folks worry, voter suppression. It could make people fear that, you know, Donald Trump might take the election away and therefore they shouldn't vote. But I'm going to tell you, Alex, the data actually shows that the people you wouldn't expect are being deterred to vote by this. It's the Republicans. Right now, the data shows that Donald Trump's threats towards elections are inspiring Democrats to go to the polls at historic numbers. 3 in 4 Democrats now say this is the most important midterm election of their lifetimes. Guess who is dissuaded from voting right now? Republicans. Republicans see a lower comparative need to vote. There's a huge enthusiasm gap between the two parties. And a lot of folks suspect that the reason is the president keeps telling his side he's got it fixed Don't worry. Remember in 2024, he told audiences, this is the last time you'll have to vote. If you elect me, you'll never have to vote again. And on July 3rd, he said, if we get the SAVE Act passed, we'll win for 100 years. The message he's sending to Republicans is you don't need to go vote. I've got this taken care of. And we're now seeing that in the data.
You know, after the president's Oval Office election address, PolitiFact reported in 2012, Florida Republicans came up with a list of about 180,000 potential non-citizens registered to vote. But then, with more scrutiny, officials whittled it down to 2,600 names. Oh, and then down to 198. Oh, then down to 85. Why stick to this playbook if it is a known loser?
Well, look, because he likes the big number that those start with. I remember when this happened in 2012 with Rick Scott. And at the end of the day, they found out that they were including people like a Brooklyn-born World War II veteran in those original numbers. I mean, they were including people who were obvious citizens, people who'd fought for our country. Here's the reason. When the federal government or states put together these lists of suspected non-citizens, almost always, it's first name, last name mismatches. There's a lot of people with a lot of similar names, and that data can be confusing. But as they whittle down those numbers and they talk to local election officials and they validate people's addresses, they realize that those numbers are wildly inflated. The federal government's doing the same thing. I saw this in the first term. The president, the White House, had us over at DHS do a similar review. We ended up at the outset with these gigantic numbers of non-citizen voters. And guess what? We found that the actual numbers were deeply insignificant. In most places, less than 1% or a tenth of 1% of registered voters, if that. There was no there. And that's a separate question, Alex, from whether any of those non-citizens accidentally registered to vote actually went and cast ballots. In a lot of cases, you're talking about people who have a case in front of a court about whether they can stay in the United States. They don't want to go to the polls. They don't want to be near law enforcement and government. And so there's not a risk there. But we'd already told the president that, and he's clearly forgotten it.